All right. Um, we're gonna do something a little different, I guess. I had a lesson for today, but we're gonna go back to 3 weeks ago when I was up here and kind of finish up that particular lesson. And then after that, we're going to finish up Derik's lesson from last week. So a little bit different than normal, and then we should get into today's lesson. It was rather short anyway, so we will try to do that. All right. So the part we're going to go back to from 3 weeks ago, if you remember, we're going to kind of try to hit the application piece of that. We didn't really get to that. I know several comments kind of alluded to a lot of those things that I wanted to cover, so I appreciate that. And any comments that you have this morning will be gladly received, so please do that as well. But we will go get into that. Do we remember what we talked about 3 weeks ago? There was three accounts that we talked about Jesus' interaction with water. What were those? I remember. The wedding, okay, that was the water to wine. Walking on water was the other one. And calming the storm, that's right. Those three. Those are the three that we talked about. I want to kind of pull those together a little bit more and go through the application of those before we move on. So we talked about the water to wine. Jesus was able to change the water completely. It was no longer water, but instantly changed into something that normally would have had to gone through a process. It takes a lot of time, but instantly was changed into wine. So what that shows us is what? Jesus has the power to transform. So I want us to remember that word, transform. So is the lesson that we read from this, the lesson we get from this is that Jesus can turn water to wine? Is that what we're supposed to take out of that? Say, I'm going to go home and he's going to change my water to sweet tea? Is that what we're supposed to learn from that? That's right. He transforms lives. That's the lesson. Jesus has the power to change people, and that's what we get from this. Take something that is just water, which was something that they easily could get. They had a lot of it, but he was able to change it into something much better for them. And that's what we hope that Jesus will do for us, and that's what we're praying for and hoping that he can do. So that's the part of that. Jesus transformed. Jesus controls the very nature of water. We see that Jesus was there at the creation. Things were created through him, and we'll get to that a little bit. But he controlled the very nature of it. He can change our nature. He can change the way we act, the way we think, and he can change our minds and our hearts. We have the Word, and the Word changes who we are all the way down to our hearts, which means it's a part of us, not just an act that we put forth. I can say and do all the right things, but Jesus, because of what he's done for me, that goes deeper than that, all the way to my heart, where it's who I am. It's not just what I do. It's who I am. So that's the power of Jesus, and that's what the power he had over water. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. I thought you said bitter first, and I was like, he does that too. We do that. But yes, he changes us for the better, and that's if we allow him. What this I hope the story that we get from that. He allows us to change us. I was thinking of a couple songs, or one song in particular. Jesus, take the wheel. Heard that. People say that, and I hope that's true. We let him drive our lives. And I've seen the bumper stickers that say, "If Jesus is the co-pilot, then you're in the wrong seat." Um, so I've seen the bumper stickers that Jesus is my co-pilot, and then I see those. He's in the wrong seat. He's got to be the one driving what we do. We have to relinquish our lives to him and give the control over. I think we see that in this little bit on this little story here. Jesus can transform the ordinary into extraordinary. A little bit to Mike's point. We can go from what we are as humans to way better in the things that we can do, and the power that God has through us. That's what we're looking for, to be transformed into much more than we are now, much more than we ever thought was possible, and the things that we can do with Christ Jesus. Um, any thoughts on that? Water to wine, a little bit more. Transform. Yep. Right. Yep. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think about that all the time. That we use that story out of context a lot. The thief on the cross. To me, it shows that Jesus is waiting for us to turn to Him, and as soon as we do, He's there. That to me is more of the story there. It's I don't know. We use it wrongly. I think it's not what it's there for. I don't think that is being told to us so that we can debate whether or not He was saved. Jesus said He's saved. He's going to be with Him in paradise. That's all I can go off of, and that's what I believe. But that to me shows when I was growing up, sometimes we see God as somebody ready to strike us down when we sin. That's the way it was taught sometimes. I think we see the change of that as I've gotten older. I've seen that type of teaching change. He's waiting for us to turn back to Him, and we're going to see that here in a minute, especially when we talk about walking on the water. That's a big point of that. But I think that's very important for us to remember. God's not the one waiting for us to sin so He can strike us down. He's waiting for us to turn back to Him. He wants us to, and He wants all to repent and to turn away from sin. So I think that's a very good point. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to the next part, the second account, the calming of the storm. Um, calming the storm. Jesus can control the behavior of water, so another sign of His authority over it. We talked a little bit about that. Some of these kind of tie in together, so we won't spend a lot of time on these. But again, just a sign that Jesus controls all that. Jesus brings peace into chaos. I think this is a very good point for us and things that we can take from what He can do for us in our lives. Without Him, we see what our lives can be without Him. They can go way off the rails and things. We know people that do not have Christ in their lives and the things that they deal with. And not to say we don't deal with those things too, because we do. But He can bring that peace that we need. We know that He can calm the storms in our lives. We just have to give Him that opportunity. And a few weeks ago we mentioned that sometimes those storms need to run their course, and He will let them to help us to be better on the other side. But we need to recognize and see that the lesson He provides in that as well. Even if the storm isn't left, we have something to learn there. The storms obeyed Him instantly, physically, spiritually. In this instance, we talked about the physical storm that He calmed immediately. He can do that as well if He chooses. Those things our spiritual storms can be stopped instantly. Jesus also shows restraint. We talk about on the cross. He could have called a legion or 10,000 angels, or just simply came down. He could have just stepped off of the cross and calmed that storm immediately. I don't know if we understand the storm in His life that was. And I think we read about Him sweating. His sweat was like blood. It was so thick. And this was a tough thing for Christ to go through. I hope we realize that and really see it. And I think sometimes we forget to separate the human part and the deity part of Jesus. Well, he knew where he was going to be going. It was just sure he didn't really. This was tough, and I hope we think about that a little bit more than we might in the past. To think about what he really went through. He was human, and he felt all of that. But he could have calmed that storm immediately, but he knew what needed to be done. That storm in his life needed to run its course, and I hope we're grateful for that. So that's something for us to remember. Anybody have any thoughts on that, Zach? Yeah, 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 right. And he also knew what God could do if he did stop that. God could make other provisions for us, and I think that's he knew that too. I think he knew that it could be changed. We can have another plan. This plan, he knew Moses changed God's mind once. Maybe he could, but he knew the plan and he carried it out. So, very good. All right, walking on water. Once again, see the power that he has over the water and even the natural laws of it. Define the composition of water and gravity itself. Um, the power of water behaves in the physical law. That's we kind of talked about those in all three. Um, he's not bound by creation. He rules over it. We see, we'll read this here once we get done with this. There's a verse that we'll read that talks about that. That Jesus was part of the creation. Everything was created through him. So he has that power over it. Um, so this is all just to show us what Jesus can do, who he is, and the power that he showed. And then through these little stories of water and how he can do that. The cool thing for us is that our faith in him can allow us to participate just like Peter did. You can see him doing these extraordinary things and walking on water, and Peter was able to do the same thing until he lost faith. But if we have the faith, we can participate in the unbelievable just like Peter did, turning the ordinary into extraordinary. But the flip side of that is our doubt can cause us to sink and be separated. The good news to that, and this goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that his hand is always right here. His hand is within arm's length of ours. Doesn't matter how far we sink. We can sink as far as we think possible, but he's only one reach away from us at all times. Doesn't matter. And I think that's a cool visual for us to think about. Um, just, just reach up. That's what we got to do. That's what we're told to do. We think we have so much. This is really hard. We have to do a whole lot of stuff. Now we have to reach our hand up and look for him. His has already reached out, waiting for us to reach back up. And again, doesn't matter if we're a little underwater or hundreds of feet underwater, sunk into our lives, that we've turned from him. He's just one arm length away. So I think that's really cool for us. Any thoughts on that, Will? All right. Sorry, it's a little small. So what we see in those three miracles, walking on water, we look at the nature and the aspect of water, and that Jesus transforms it. Calming the storm, it has power and chaos, yet Jesus controls it. And then the walking on the water, the laws of water and gravity, and Jesus transcends. So Jesus transforms, Jesus controls, and Jesus transcends. Those are the three things I hope that we remember throughout this lesson here. Transformation. What in our lives needs transforming? Something to think about as we move on throughout this and go to the next part, but something to remember, and hopefully you'll take what in your life needs transforming from Jesus. What do we need to change right now? What chaos in our life needs to hear the words, peace be still? That's what Jesus can do for us. What in our lives, how many storms, no matter the number, the severity of them, what needs to hear peace be still by Jesus? Think about those things. In our faith, we see from Peter, are we focused on Christ or the waves? He was focused on Christ early. Like what Will was saying, we look at him, we focus on him, and we step out onto the water. And now I don't need him. I'm here. I'm on the water. I'm walking. I don't need Jesus anymore. And we forget, and that's when we start to sink. So where's our faith? Are we focused on Christ, or are we focused on the waves? So we see in those three, water can destroy, water can sustain, and water can shape. That's the power of water. But Jesus commands it, changes it, and walks or rules over it. So again, just seeing the power of Jesus throughout these stories. Any final thoughts on that? That's kind of where I wanted to get back to from a few weeks ago. And then we can move on. But anybody have any closing thoughts on that they wanted to share? Yeah. Yep. Or Satan. Three options. Hopefully Jesus. Somebody else. All right. We're going to switch gears completely. Oh, no, we're going to finish these real quick. And then we'll switch gears. Turn to Colossians 1, 16 and 17. I said we'd mention these earlier. I forgot. Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 and verse 17, just to prove that point a little bit more. Colossians 1, 16 and 17. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. So, again, to remember who he is and his power over these things. And then Matthew 28, verse 18. I think we know what this verse says. Matthew 28, 18. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So again, we see the deity of Christ and his authority over it all. Even water and the way that nature works. Nature as we know it, he can change it and make it different. So pretty neat to see, I think. All right, we're transitioning over to light from water now. We're going to go back into Derik's lesson from last week, Derik Davidson, not me. And he had a third point that he didn't get to, and I told him I would cover it. So if you'll turn to John chapter 12. John chapter 12. We'll start in verse 35. I'm just going to read 35 and 36, and then we'll read the rest here in a moment. Then Jesus said to them, a little while longer, the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he's going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of the light. These things Jesus spoke and departed and was hidden from them. So here we see a warning from Christ to walk in the light. This is to his disciples. The light's with you right now. The light is next to you. walk in it while it's here. Um, how long? We knew it wasn't going to be there long. He was going to move on and go to the cross, and he was going to be gone from them and not in their presence anymore. But they had the light while he was there. So let me ask you, is it easier for us to do the right thing or be righteous sitting here in our worship together or at your workplace? Here, Gwen says, right here. Um, I hope so. Is that always the case? It's not. This should be an environment where we can be and do the right thing. Um, but just because we're here, does that mean we're always going to do the right thing and be righteous? It doesn't. So I hope we remember that. But what is Jesus telling them here? Here's the opportunity you have. Take full advantage of it, because he's not going to be with them very long. Take advantage for us. We take advantage, hopefully, of our time here together. I know Jesus isn't physically with us, but we know he is in our presence. But we have each other, and I hope that we take advantage of that we draw from one another, learn from one another, and don't just come to check a box. I think there's parts of our lives where we do that. We show up and we check the box. And then there's parts of life where we're a little more involved, and that can go back and forth. Hopefully we are more involved. Be here, be involved. Be a blessing to each person here as much as you can. Jesus was the greatest blessing, and they were standing right next to him the whole time. How different would it be if Jesus was physically sitting here today? Probably be a little different for us, I hope. There was a lesson when I was a kid that I heard, and the preacher actually created a cardboard cutout about this tall of Jesus. And the lesson was, he didn't give him a face because we don't know what he looks like, but he did make a person, just a cardboard cutout, life size, and asked us if we had to take that around with us wherever we went, where would we go? What would we do? If that cardboard cutout of Christ, he called it cardboard Jesus, call it wherever you want. If he was sitting in the back seat with you, where would you go? And I thought that was a pretty neat illustration to really think about. It would at least make us think about what we're doing, where we're going, who we're going with, the things we say, if he was there with us at all times. We had to carry it around. And I want us to think that way, that he is always with us, always around us. The disciples had him physically. We don't. So it's hard. Sometimes we forget. But let's remember. It does make us think a little bit. We would have to conscientiously make those bad decisions knowing that he's sitting there. Probably make the places I go and the things I do a little more purposeful, I would think. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Any comments? Yep, we did. WWJD. I can imagine. In those days, you probably did. Oh, yeah, we were always we don't hang a cross, we don't wear a cross, we don't wear it for whatever reason. I guess don't show that you follow Christ. It was. Yeah, WWJD, if you didn't hear that, that's what. I remember when those came out. We wore them for a little while. It does. Nothing else, it makes you think. I heard a comedian say if you need a bracelet to think about what you're doing, and then you need to take it and slap yourself in the eye with it. But it is a good reminder of what we need to be doing. I think it does help, I hope, and at least keeps it very close to us. Jim, do you have? I am. I am. I did have one of those. Yep. Yep. It is. We have it. We got it as close as we need it to be. The Word of God is with us at all times. It's either here or it's on our phone, or we have it very close by. We can get to it. Yeah, we are being watched. Lesson for the day. Anybody else? All right. So, did the disciples take advantage of their time with Jesus? Maybe in spurts they did somewhat, so there was the disciples, and then we see the Pharisees, the Gentiles, all those people that were witnesses of Jesus. Did they believe? So let's continue. We're going to stay in John 12. We'll go from 37 through 41 here. But although he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spoke. Lord, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe, because Isaiah said again, He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. These things Isaiah said when he saw his glory and spoke of them. They were all witnesses of the things that Jesus was doing. Whether they saw it or they heard it secondhand, they knew what Jesus had been doing. And so they should have believed, you would think. We always say that. I've said that before. I know I hear people say it. If Jesus came here and did a miracle in front of me, I'd believe. Would we? Maybe for a few minutes. But we'd move on to something else. I mean, they did. They saw it firsthand. They watched him do it. And it didn't matter. Just a few saw it and believed. Sherry, Jeff, something? Yep. They've had it. They've already heard that. They don't need me to go back. They've already seen all this. They've had it. Damon? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get to a little bit of that. We probably won't get to the transfiguration, which we were going to cover. But we see that when Jesus is there with Elijah and Moses. Um, hey, can we build? We need to build 3 tabernacles to the 3 that are here. They didn't get it. They didn't understand it. But the disciples, they believed. But now the Pharisees and the Gentiles, a lot of them did not, but some did. But guess what? They were afraid. We talked about that last week in Derik's class. The parents of the blind man, they knew what had happened, but they were too afraid to say what happened because they knew they'd be removed from the synagogue and they would be ostracized, and they did not. They knew, but they were afraid to say it. And I think that's a lesson for us. God, do you have something? Yeah. Hmm. Absolutely. All right. Let's 42. Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. Then Jesus cried out and said, He who believes in me believes not in me, but in him who sent me. And he who sees me sees him who sent me. I have come as a light into the world, that whoever believes in me should not abide in darkness. And if anyone hears my words and does not believe, I do not judge him. For I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has that which judges him. The word that I have spoken will judge him in the last day. For I have not spoken on my own authority, for the Father who sent me, he gave me he gave me a command, what I should say and what I should speak. And I know that his command is everlasting life. Therefore, whatever I speak, just as the Father has told me, so I speak. It's a very powerful set of verses there. And I hope we take those to heart, that we're here to believe. Jesus gave us all of this. You have all of this so that we can believe. That's what we're called to do, is to just believe. If not, if we reject him, then the words that he spoke will judge us in that last day. So something for us to think about and make sure that we are doing and believing all the things that we read. I think sometimes, and this is just me, when we went through the 3 accounts of water, I call them accounts. Some people call them stories. We call some of these people that we read about characters, and I try not to do that. I try to treat them as people. I think characters kind of makes it sound like a story. And not that there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like we make it a little less real sometimes. So I hope we read this as a history book and not a fantasy book. So that's what I hope that we do. But anyway, so again, we see that some believe, but we're afraid to admit it. We talked about that. I love the praise of men. Anybody have any thoughts on any of that before we move on to the next? We got a few minutes here. Yeah, Corey, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right. Correct. Yeah, I agree. I think we overlook that sometimes and don't think about that being part of the plan. But if everybody had believed in this day, Jesus would have never went to the cross for it. So I think we do see some divine blindness that we're told that they are blinded. We see the man that met Jesus after he rose. He was blinded to who Jesus was. I don't know if he had blurry vision at the time, just couldn't see him, or Jesus' face changed to him, he looked different. We don't know. But we do see that does happen from time to time in order for God's plan to be carried out. I think that's a good point to remember that, everyone is not going to believe, but there probably could have been some that did, but it would have changed everything. So we do see God stepping in, I think, and making sure that his plan is carried out no matter what. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. I don't know that we'll have time to read all of these. Let's read one of them. We'll read Luke 9. It's 10:08, and we're finally in today's lesson. Luke 9. That's was my goal. Yeah. Luke chapter 9. We'll read 28 through 36. Now it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings that he took Peter, John, and James and went up on the mountain to pray. As he prayed, the appearance of his face was altered, and his robe became white and glistening. And behold, 2 men talked with him, who were Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his decease, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. But Peter and those with him were heavy with sleep, and when they were fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who stood with him. And it happened, as they were parting from him, that Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. And let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were fearful as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. When the voice had ceased, Jesus was found alone, but they kept quiet and told no one in those days any of the things they had seen. So we see, actually, go to Exodus 34. Do you want to read that one? Exodus 34. (29 through 35). Exodus 34:29. Now it was so, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand, that he came down from the mountain. And Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone like while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. Then Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him, and Moses talked with them. Afterward, all the children of Israel came near and gave them as commandment. He gave them as commandments all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with him, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And he would come out and speak to the children of Israel whatever he had been commanded. And whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, the skin of Moses' face shone, then Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. So we see Jesus' face shone, and his clothing was turned white, and then we see the same thing with Moses. What's the difference between these two? Anybody? Kind of a broad question. Exactly. Moses' face shone because of the glory that was from God that was on the mountain with him. He was a reflection of God's glory. Jesus is more than a reflection of that light. He's the source of it for us. He's the Word. We see Jesus calls himself a lot of things, but he is the light. He is the Word. And in another verse, he's the way, the truth, and the life. He's a lot of things. Now, we are called to be a reflection, going back to what Scott said, just like Moses was. Moses was a messenger. He was a teacher. He was a reflection of that light, and that's what we are. Here in the Transfiguration, it's more than a reflection. Jesus is more than a teacher or a messenger. He's the divine light in human form. We base our faith on who he is, not just what he teaches. We see Moses and Elijah are there with him. Moses representing the law, Elijah representing the prophets. And then we see that the law and the prophets were shadows of what was to come. And I think the wording of shadow is interesting when we're talking about light. The shadow kind of dims that light. And I think that's what these were meant to do. The law and the prophets were there as a foreshadowing of what was to come. Jesus fulfills and overshadows both the law and the prophet. He's greater than both. And then we see God coming down through the cloud and saying, listen to him. What he tells you, listen. Put away the law and the prophecies for another time. They are not needed in this. Once he brings the new law, it's not needed. Listen to his son. And I think we see the difference between the law and the prophets and Christ. He's there to fulfill it, and he overshadows those things. That those are no longer any good. It's what he brings to the table is greater than both the law and the prophets. And that was a big deal for these Pharisees and the Sadducees and all the people of this time, the Jews. And I think we give the Jews a hard time, but that's a big deal to take away the law and the prophets from them, even though they didn't really completely understand the prophecies. But that was a big deal, and it was tough for them. But that's what we see is Jesus was greater than those things. He's the light that pushes away those shadows. So that's why I wanted to do those other parts, because this one was a little short for me. But we didn't read the other two. The other two accounts are basically the same thing. Just talks about the same. But we have Jesus as the light over taking over the law and the prophets. And then when the apostles awoke and saw him, what happened? what was left? Just Jesus. The law and the prophets are going away, and now it's just Jesus. I think that's the imagery that we see, that those things are no longer valid. Any thoughts before we close up? Will? Too late.